Alrighty. Well, firstly and foremostly, thank you so much for joining our second panel. We are hosting a four-part series all about the fun topics that remote work has brought up over the last few years. It's worth noting that there is a pretty good percentage of people that have been working remotely since before COVID. So this is a really great opportunity to bring some veterans in the space to share their knowledge, their experience, their wisdom, all from their career. We did notice after our last panel, there was a lot of questions around engagement and leadership. So we figured while deciding topics, why not make a panel all about engagement and leadership? So the big topic right now, if you will, the negotiation that's taking place is the debate of returning to the office, hybrid work, or fully remote. And there's this really big battle going on, and we all know the conversations that we're having. And what we're really trying to do here through these panels is ease the transfer to remote or solve some problems that people are having through remote work and really make sure that both sides are not only being heard, but being respected. This can be from, the manager side, knowing that their employees are doing the work they need to do, so the trust, while the employee side needs to also make sure that they're getting their work done and not taking phone calls from volcanoes or hot air balloons. So the panel today is comprised of some really great remote leaders. Joining us, we have Nadia Harris. She is the founder of remoteworkadvocate.com. Dean Calhoun, he's the founder and CEO at Agility Solutions. And Vivek Nigam is the founder of Be Remote LLC. So firstly, thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate you taking your time. We're in 5 different time zones, I think is what we're speaking from. Something like that, more or less. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the floor to the panelists to introduce themselves, give them a few minutes to talk about some high-level thoughts. Before that, just to introduce myself, once again, my name is Matt. I'm the founder of Nomadic 6, and we build experiences for location independence together with the intention of thriving while living the remote life to the fullest. All our events are in locations handpicked for their infrastructure that supports remote work, and we only partner with scenic retreat centers all over the world. Our programs range from company offsites to remote team reconnections and remote leader intensives. We'll talk more about this at the end, but this is an opportunity for you to connect with other leaders and spend time in person with some of our panelists and future panelists that we'll have. So without further ado, I will hand the floor to Nadia.
Oh, wow, I'm first. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really excited. Thanks for the invite. Really happy to be here. As you've introduced me, I'll do it once again because I see that other participants joined so that, I'm not a no name here in the end. So my name is Nadia Harris, and yes, I'm the founder of remoteworkadvocate.com. You said high level thoughts. Well, to check out all the practical aspects that I do, I strongly encourage you to get in touch on LinkedIn or check out my website, remoteworkadvocate.com. Indeed, it's that simple. What I believe in when it comes to working remotely, working in a hybrid way, or the future of work comes from 2015, where I started having this lifestyle myself. I didn't believe in it in the very beginning. I even shared my thoughts quite a while ago that my first check that I received for working remotely in 2015 was $4. And I thought it was a scam. So I thought, no, it's never going to work. But then with time, it turned out to be an amazing opportunity to connect with people all around the world, to work with different businesses when it comes to implementing flexible working solutions. Long story short, the patterns that we have believed to be the only right ones when it comes to office-based work and ways of working and 9 to 5. I remember a long time pre-pandemic that literally has been now an accelerator to shift the ways of working towards different approaches that we're talking about right now. I remember pre-pandemic, I would speak with different companies and many of them would tell me, yeah, Nadia, but we have a different standard. And I'm like, okay, what's the standard? Who invented the standard? And digging into this, I have finally even written a book about it, which is called How to Tackle Hybrid Working. And it starts with the industrial era, labor laws being invented, literally implemented 100 years ago for a completely different reality, not as we are right now in a digital working era. And I believe that we are in really interesting times today because it's up to all of us to rebuild the future based on global mobility, obviously the internet, which is a great phenomenon and enables us to connect from different time zones here and people from all around the world, and also become people-centric. It's not this way that people should fit into processes, but today processes are built for people. And I think it's beautiful to explore all this together today, and also from a leadership perspective. That's all on my end to start with. And who's next? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really happy to have you here. I know you just spoke in Berlin on very similar topics, so hopefully everything's still fresh for you. Vivek, why don't you go next for us?
Sure. So my name is Vivek Nigam. I'm the founder and CEO of Be Remote LLC, and we're focused on building team engagement and helping employees or teams have better participation. Quick story. So when I was growing up, my dad was born in India. I was born in India. I came here when I was very young. But I remember growing up and watching him struggle, like getting passed up for promotion after promotion. And it wasn't that he wasn't qualified, is that he wasn't doing all the other things, like engaging with people. And I remember as a teenager, he told me, when you start working, make sure that you go out after work and spend time with people and go out for a beer and do those things. He just thought that was the way. So when I started working in corporate America and I had teams, I started seeking out the people who were much quieter, right? Why are they so quiet? Why are they not participating in the team? They're super talented. And I just started working with them one-on-one and trying to understand, how do you get people to speak up? And this is an in-person situation. And I'll say 100% of the time, once we got them the opportunity to speak, the opportunity to feel valued, the opportunity to take on a larger role or do a presentation, they'd always, the first time get nervous and try to push it off. But when they did it, it was always 100% of the time, it was brilliant. So did a lot of studying on how to promote better team participation. And then as remote work started coming in, realized that even more when you're in a remote situation, different offices, different locations in the same company, that situation becomes even more prevalent, where you got people that start to become quieter and quieter. So we built a platform to help teams participate at a better level. And that's what we've been focused on for some time. And our very first implementation, honestly, was for an insurance case of injured workers who you want to coach remotely to get back to health. Then you think about that situation, it's very specific, but broadening that out, it has very common aspects to it for remote work in general. And what we've been focused on most recently is what we're realizing today, managers need to be much better coaches. So they need better tools, they need better avenues to be able to coach their people. But yeah, that's what we're all about. Looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. Also, really happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's go over to Dean.
Well, thank you, Matt. I'm Dean Calhoun, the founder and CEO of Agility Solutions, and we provide occupational and product quality toxicology services to the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. We have over 800 clients in 75 countries. So usually before COVID, I was traveling. I told Nadia before the session started, I was typically in, 7 countries a year, and it's starting to ramp back up now. So I've been in 6 so far this year. But we've been in business for over 20 years, and we've been fully remote for over 12 years. So we were remote before remote was the cool thing to do. So when COVID hit and everybody started going remote, we didn't miss a beat. Everybody's like, well, just a new day, so it worked out really well for us. We have 19 employees, and they're located throughout the world. Most of the employees are in the United States, but we have employees in Canada, Montreal, in Brazil, Sao Paulo area, Dubai, and also Singapore. The kind of the lessons I've learned from being remote is fourfold. The first one, if you're hiring remote employees, you should really interview them in a remote environment. If they can't communicate well remotely during the interview process, how are you going to expect them to communicate, if you hire them, right? So, and be really careful about interviewing candidates that refuse to turn on their camera.
Mhm.
I don't know why it is, but ones that refuse to turn on their camera, if we ended up hiring them, they didn't work out well. Because they felt uncomfortable in that remote camera environment. Secondly, even if they are remote, we try to have, because we need to have collaboration and need to discuss specific projects and work together. We try to get employees to have a core set of working hours. It doesn't mean that they have to work, 8 hours straight or without taking a break, but we need to have some overlap, at least some overlap in expectation when they're going to be online. So we can schedule those collaborative meetings and whatever, have a remote work policy. And finally, most important, but is be human. Everybody likes to smile, and kind of what Vivek was saying, that spend time with people. Well, in a remote environment, it's difficult to do that, but having those collaborative, scheduled kind of one-on-ones and things like that, an all hands meeting does make a difference. But be human. Everybody likes to smile. Everybody likes to eat. Everybody likes to laugh, so, be yourself. Don't try to be anything that you're not. And also what Nadia said, and I think one of the values of having employees all over the world is you learn a different perspective. The experiences you get by working with employees that come from a totally different culture is so valuable, and it helps us grow as an organization. And I was talking to one of my executive coaches the other day, and diversity is not a problem with us. We have a very, very diverse workforce, so we're very happy about that. And listen to the quiet person in the room, much like Vivek was saying. That person that doesn't say much, they probably have some very valuable insight. And managers need to be skilled at getting them to speak up and give their opinions. I saw something the other day that was pretty interesting, that when you have a meeting, they would always start the meeting when asking for feedback and comments, start with the lowest ranked employee in the organization. Start with them. Because otherwise, if a higher ranking person speaks first, everybody will agree with that person. So start with the lowest ranking person, and that can be done online easily. So that's kind of my high level thoughts about, remote work in general. There's a lot of technical details that we deal with, but those can typically be worked out and aren't that really interesting from a leadership standpoint.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dean, so much. We're really happy to have you here. You seem like you've seen it all. You've done it all. So that's really great to hear your initial thoughts. And we're going to dive into the question section. But first, we're going to launch a little poll. We did ask you guys to submit some questions before joining us. And there were some that really stood out just for the sake of the volume that we were asked these questions. We figured we'd turn around and ask you guys. So I'm going to launch this poll. It should be coming your way. Question 1, cameras on or off during team meetings. That's such a hot topic, apparently. 2, how many time zones are you operating in? Are you only 1, 2 to 4? Have you lost count? Question 3, what's the ideal size of a remote team per manager? Less than 5, 5 to 10? So go ahead and fill those out. And while you're doing that, I'm going to give a little shout out to our lovely sponsors who kind of help make all this happen. First and foremost, once again, Citizen Remote. They are your home during a life on the road, from their extensive resources on digital nomad visas to their new app aimed at helping you make the most of your remote lifestyle. Citizen Remote is here to help you build your borderless world. Again, great group of guys. Love working with them. They really are the go-to if you're looking for European visas as Americans or vice versa. They really know what they're doing over there. Group Greeting, they're an employee appreciation company. Nearly 95% of the Fortune 500 companies use Group Greeting to send their e-cards. It's really perfect for remote teams. And basically the way it works is all members of a remote team can sign a digital card. thank yous, birthdays, special recognitions, plenty of occasions. So for those of you listening to this, if you use promo code Nomadic6, that's Nomadic number 6, all one word, you get 50% off a single card for the next month. All right, and that only applies to new customers, for the record. If you're already using them, great, fantastic. And one more little special shout out to a friend of mine, Nini Fritz. She is with the Work Happiness Project. They create fun yet meaningful team building workshops to help your team get to know each other outside of work, connect with each other and with themselves. All workshops are based on 3 pillars: live fuller, connect deeper, and be happier. She has worked with global teams at Meta, Google, and Dell. And also with the coupon code Nomadic6, you can get 20% discount on your next team building workshop or her Christmas party event. And I highly recommend you checking that out. I'm going to drop a link here in the chat just for you to go learn a little more. All right, so let's see how this poll went. Let's see. I'm going to share the results with everyone here. It looks like most people agree. 64% said cameras on. That's good. I think I would agree with that. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, we want to see each other's faces. I did learn a fun little trick from a future panelist. His name is Jay. You'll see him in a month. But he has this trick where he pushes back from the camera. So you see more and you can talk with your hands a little better. I thought that was a fun little trick, especially if you're like me and you talk with your hands, you know? Something to take home from here. It looks like in terms of time zones, 55% of you are working in 2 to 4. That seems pretty standard. I feel you, those of you who have lost count. I've been in that boat. I know that all too well. And in terms of ideal size, 5 to 10, less than 5 definitely seems to be ideal. There's a wonderful book called The Art of Gathering. If any of you have ever read it, it does talk about group sizes, more with the intentionality of gathering people together. And the number 5 is a really great number for intentional conversation. And it's kind of a funny experiment. Next time you have a dinner party, any group over or under 5, it's going to be a group conversation. But as soon as you hit 6 people or above, there'll be break-off conversations. And everyone's going to get distracted, or they're all going to listen to one person speak. So 5 really is that magic number if you want group conversations. So thanks for filling that out, everybody. Very nice of you. And let's dive in. All right. So the way this is going to work is I have all the questions here in front of me. I'm going to direct them to our speakers, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All righty. So I do want this conversation. I want this first question to be kind of answered by all of you. I'll start with Dean. How would you define a leader?
Okay, well, you know, when you sent us the questions in advance, I thought about this a little bit, and I didn't want to sound too much like a textbook from an MBA program. You know, my kind of definition of a leader is someone that communicates and inspires others to join in advancing the vision and the mission of the company. I know personally at all hands meetings, I open up by starting and talking about the vision and the mission of the company. And, you know, we always want to make sure at our leadership team meetings, we always want to make sure that the vision and mission is still relevant and that we're heading in that direction. As a leader, you can't over communicate it, what the vision and mission of the company is. And once employees start getting tired of hearing it, you probably just starting to get the message across, right? So, you know, that's kind of my definition. I'm sure others have. There's many, you know, leadership traits that can fall out of that. But, you know, if you want the true definition of a leader, that's probably what I would say it would be.
Nadia, what do you think?
There was an Apple TV series called Ted Lasso, I think. I don't know if anyone has watched it, about a coach. Yeah, and there were words, the following words. So that a leader is someone who enables people to be the best version of themselves. And that is leadership for me, definitely. And I think what is a paradox here is that many people want to be leaders and they think, what do I do? How to be a leader? Should I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, meditate? No, the problem is leadership is not about you, but about others, what you do to others. And as you said, Dean, there are different ways and different leadership styles to achieve this. It depends what kind of person you are, what kind of environment this is. But ultimately, what can you do so that people join this journey with you and that they are the accelerators to make great things happen together? So it's not me, you follow me because I'm your leader. no, how can I inspire you so that you join my mission and that we do this together? And I think there is no one size fits all approach here. Definitely some magic sauce required. But then on the other hand, it's all about the intrinsic motivation and just this special something, this sparkle that has to be there so that we feel that we are in this together.
Wonderful answer. That's really great. Ted Lasso is a really great example of a leader that I think we all want to have on our team or leading us. But yeah, good reference. And then Vivek, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, years ago, probably 20, 25 years ago, there's a great book called The Leadership Engine. And I kind of set my thinking about leadership. And I'm gonna piggyback a little bit more on what Nadia said about being a coach and a mentor. Today, more than ever, every leader needs to be a coach and a mentor. And if we talk about at the team leadership level, where, yeah, and I agree, like when people think about being a manager, being a leader, they think about power. They think, hey, I've got control, I can influence, I can do these things. But really, your mission as a leader, and the person I had as a mentor when I became a manager the first time, he said, your job as a leader is to make yourself useless. And I thought that was brilliant. He said, grow your people enough so that they don't need you anymore. And really, that's all about coaching, mentoring, and showing them the way. Yeah, and that takes form, not just the work that they do, but the people that they are and how they engage and who they engage with and the things they need to do to be successful in the environment they're in. So to me, I think coaching and mentoring is critically important. And yeah, just picking back on what Dean and Nadia said, I wholeheartedly agree. It is about people, and just make sure you're paying attention to them.
I think that's great. I love the idea of replacing yourself. That's something Jim Collins talks about too. Is the idea of even succession. The idea of making sure that if you have a company and you want it to continue after you, you want to make sure that everyone is going to be fine. And business is a very personal thing. My relationship's more with like small, medium businesses. So I imagine it's different for the big guys, but a lot of businesses close down because they don't train their leaders. They don't train people to replace them. So when people retire, the businesses go under. So I think it's very important.
Vivek, comments, Vivek, there's sometimes you have to shift your leadership style, depending on the situation. I mean, you can have, I think Jason Kalakaias, a venture capitalist, said, sometimes you need to be a wartime leader. Mm-hmm. If all of a sudden you're like had a huge miss on revenue or a huge miss on profitability, now you might have to come in and take a lot more control over the situation than you normally would, and express that strong, more directive leadership versus a peacetime leadership when you're trying to multiply the abilities of your employees and coach them. There's a book out there called Multipliers that talks about amplifying the ability of your employees. Yeah, that's great in a peacetime situation. That's exactly what you want to do. But in a wartime situation, you got to take a lot more direct control over things.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second and third that one. So we just took that poll, cameras on and off. I think we would agree that cameras on is best. However, I do want to bring up an interesting case that I just read about. There's a employee that was able to sue his company for requiring him to keep his camera on for 9 hours straight. And he was apparently awarded like $75,000 because it was an infringement on his rights, his privacy. So I guess there's a limit, right? In requiring a 9 hour straight, camera probably might be too much. So this next question is really about Zoom exhaustion. We all have been on all the Zooms and way too many Zooms. So how would you handle Zoom exhaustion? Nadia, I'll go to you first.
Okay, so I would say that Zoom fatigue, this is something that has started being really popular during the pandemic, right? Because suddenly, and not really that much before, because me working with remote first teams for such a long time, I think that the way that people collaborate asynchronously and really have mastered this skill, it wasn't even a topic. So the paradox that has happened during the pandemic is that people started downloading all these tools, including Zoom, that hence the name, obviously, trying to replicate the in-office experience, right? So if you're walking down the hallway And you can approach someone suddenly and say, hi, oh, let's jump on a Zoom call, let's do the same thing. And unfortunately, that's not the way it's done. And this has created, I would say, pathologies, remote pathologies. That's the way I call it. That when I have been running workshops for quite a while with different companies and with fresh hybrid and fresh remote companies, right, that have never done this before, I had people who would tell me that they attended 11 Zoom meetings during the day. And I'm like, when do you work? And then also another story, kind of remote proximity bias as well, because if companies have transitioned from the in-office model and then suddenly everyone was working from home, it was this way that, oh, I'm going to check your calendar. If you have so many meetings scheduled, that means you're busy. That means you're working. If your calendar is empty, that means you're not working. You're free, right? Or you can have a 6, 7, 8 meeting, things like that. So how to fight it? Well, obviously there will be meeting rules that we have to implement, but I would definitely start with the idea that we are not working productively when we are attending numerous meetings, right? That's the thing. We don't really have to be together all the time. We don't have to be there synchronously. There is a new study that Cisco has released this year. I strongly recommend to Google it. And there it says that approximately 1/3 of employees spent within the target group that was analyzed, and it was quite broad, 1/3 of all employees spend at least one full day stuck in meetings during the week. So then if you multiply it, when you take this number and then the number of your employees, you're going to see that it's a massive problem for well-being, for productivity, obviously money-wise as well, how much a company can really lose. Because what's also important when we talk about Zoom fatigue, it's not just the time that we spent within a meeting, but we also have to understand that from a psychological perspective, and also there's actually data that proves it, for us to actually, after a meeting, to get back to deep work, we require approximately 20-30 minutes to focus and continue on the things that we were doing before. So now imagine that your meetings are scattered during the day. You have one in the morning, then 45 minutes break, then 30 minutes, another meeting, then 2 hours break, So all the time you kind of keep getting completely crazy because you're like, oh, I just have 45 minutes. I have something really, really interesting, something really important to do, but I'm just not going to do it now because I'll just get it over with, let's just do this meeting. So definitely things like core hours, I would implement things that sometimes, if you mentioned the magic number 5, right? And I would say that a meeting should happen if we are having an interaction, not a monologue. And there are 2 groups that always say that meetings go wrong. So either the people that schedule them because they say that people aren't listening, they're distracted, they're multitasking. And then the people that attend the meetings, they say like, oh, this meeting didn't have any meaning really. So who's the culprit here? I think both sides, and we really somehow need to find the source of this issue. And I know, Vivek, that you have a lot to say about that as well.
Sure. No, and actually very much along the lines that you're talking about. I read something and I love this. It said, what are the 2 favorite words your employees love to hear? It's meeting canceled. And it's just, and it's all about, we talk to people that say they spend 7.5 hours a day in meetings, but the foundation here is all about companies have a meeting first culture, right? And when I work for several large corporations, anytime there was a task to be done, the very next phrase was, I'll schedule a meeting. And it is part of the culture, it's part of the way that people have gotten used to getting work done. I remember actually years ago in a employee review conversation, talking to some other managers, there was a woman who actually said, this person was great. She scheduled 80 meetings this month. And we all looked at each other and said, was that a positive or a negative, right? And I think that's a negative, like, if you're scheduling so many meetings. So there's ways there's ways to use asynchronous tools, and we've been focused on this quite a bit about take some meetings that can be taken off the calendar. Status update meetings are ones that I think are a great opportunity, kind of low-hanging fruit. The meetings where you do a stand-up or things where you go around the room and everyone gives their updates, great opportunity to take that and take it offline, right? And have everybody record a video. Our platform has this all baked together, but there's very many tools that you can use to do the same type of thing, where everyone can now record their updates. They can do it in their time zone, so that nobody's up at 4 a.m. anymore, right? And we talked about time zone, so it has a lot of benefits. And now, once everybody's given their updates, you can go back and just review the ones that you want. If you've got 10 people in a meeting, you may only need to know 2 people's updates. So, but instead, if you're in that live meeting, now you're waiting the entire time. We've actually had a customer that reduced 5 hours of meetings a week in their first month, and they're going on 18 months now. And they said, yeah, we've never brought them back, because they adopted the asynchronous mindset to say, we don't need to do this live. The conversation that may follow, you may need to do that live, and go do that. But that update, let's just do the updates, and everyone give your updates. And then when we need follow-ups, let's do the follow-ups. So yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities using some tools that are out there, but it is a mindset and a process that you can think of, and really embrace that asynchronous mindset.
So Vivek, I'll follow up with our next question here, since it's kind of a similar topic. What do you think is a good way to create water cooler moments? How do you continue those water cooler conversations or check-ins with colleagues, customers, stakeholders? What's some activities that you can try to use?
Yeah, let me take those. It's so great topics. It's something that we spend a lot of time with. So let me take those a little bit separately: check-ins and water coolers. And interesting thing happened when the pandemic happened. You think that checking in on your employees is a wonderful thing, and we think that's a wonderful thing. Obviously, you want to make sure they're doing well. But what happened is, during the pandemic, people started going overboard. They would check in every 10 minutes. Hey, are you okay? How are you doing? You're not here. And we got some quotes from people that said, my manager's talking to me all day long, and you'd think that was a positive thing. In this case, there were people who were overdoing it. And people went down to the point where they were putting keyloggers on people's laptops to see, are they actually doing work, right? So that's a little bit too extreme. So let's look at check-ins. There's a little bit of an art and a science to check-ins. You want to check in with people, and it's not always a one-on-one, you have another meeting. You should have your one-on-ones, but find a way to check in. Just drop a note and say, hey, just checking in. Give me, do you need anything? Do you need a conversation? Just seeing how you're doing. Do it once a week, twice a week, just a quick, but it's got to be something that doesn't make them stop doing what they're doing and give you a big status update. It should be a really quick, I'm good. I could use a team meeting. I'm kind of pressured, but I'm okay. Yeah, I'm all good. I'm inspired, that type of thing, right? So you want some very, very basic response. And if you can keep track of those things over time, you can see where people are starting to say, hey, this person's been great, but now I'm starting to see they're feeling a little disconnected, or they could use a little more conversation. Maybe I should spend more time with them. So there's tools like that. The water cooler, on the other hand, one of the things we're missing a lot from not being in the office is the ability to just walk by someone's desk and say, hey, how'd it go yesterday? Hey, I know you were going to do this thing, or your son was graduating, or things like that. And we're missing those type of things. But we've got a lot of tools to be able to do an ad hoc meeting, right? Just start a meeting and, just say, hey guys, I've got a few minutes here. Anybody want to join? And just start the meeting, leave it open and let people join. We actually built in a water cooler with a notification that gives that extra thing. So if anybody has some time, you want to start a meeting, whoever wants to join, have a conversation. You can discuss whatever you want to do. A couple of principles there. You want to keep that conversation private, not logged. You want to keep it so that you can have maybe a non-work conversation. There's a lot of tools to be able to do those type of things, but you have to embrace that idea of this could be an interruption, and let's not require everybody to be in the conversation at that time. Whoever can attend and have a quick talk. So yeah, those are the type of things that we've seen some success with.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'll add on too. What I've seen from other groups is they do work sprints where they'll kind of like pair up with a work buddy, or maybe groups of 3, like a really small intimate group. And you'll say, all right, we have an hour sprint. Here's what I'm working on. Here's what I'd like to achieve in the next hour. And, let's go. And then you set the timer, you do a quick 60 minutes. And then at the end of it, you say, hey, how'd you do? Whatever. And then you kind of open up room for conversation at the end of that. Very naturally. So it kind of feels like you're in that library mode where you're working with somebody. but you're not really required to be there 9 hours straight, right?
Exactly right.
That's a little tip I've seen. So Dean, next question's for you.
Well, look, before we go on the next question, I just want to add one thing to what Vivek just said. One of the things I do as a leader of the company is I do skip level check-ins all the time. So, I'll jump online, see that we use Slack. I'll jump on and see that this employee's online. It may be, 2 levels, 3 levels down from me, and I'll say, "Hey, you got a second?" And they know by now to expect those, that they're not in trouble or anything. And so I'll jump on and just ask how they're doing, if they need anything. And, it may only last 5 minutes. And I believe they appreciate those. So, all right, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I like that too. So since we're on that topic, what kind of goals or KPIs are you setting for your teams? And how often do you measure them?
Yeah, we have lots of both company goals and individual level goals. Of course, there's the normal revenue and profitability, monetary goals, but we also have quality KPIs that we check on. If we get we write scientific reports. If we get not a complaint, but a issue identified from a client that there was an error in the report, then we log that on and we count how many of those we have and what the amount of time to closure of that case, we call it, to get it fixed. We also have, for sales and business development team, we have what's called customer touch points. So, which is any kind of customer interaction, whether it's an email, a phone call, meeting at a conference, a face-to-face meeting, etc. And then we have some productivity KPIs or expectations. To the extent possible, at least for the sales and business development team, we have dashboards that we create, so we know everything almost in a real-time basis where everything stands. Now, for the non-sales and business development people, their KPIs are typically reviewed by their direct manager on a once a month basis, but at the minimum a quarterly basis. Now, next year we're looking at implementing a more formal online OKR tracking system, just because right now it's primarily all managed through Word documents, which is just very clunky as you get over about 20 employees. So, we want kind of more of the dashboard appearance where everybody knows where they are and their KPIs and OKRs. So,
yeah, I think that's great. Everyone kind of had like the quarterly deadline, if you will. So it's probably good to have things in between, once a week, every couple of weeks. And dashboards are always very variable. Are these dashboards like custom made for your group, or do you use any kind of major software?
Well, we use Salesforce for our CRM. So the Salesforce dashboard, they have all the little plugins that you can put into it and create all kinds of fancy graphs and gauges and things like that. I mean, sometimes you have to be a little careful not to have too many metrics, right? And because otherwise you can't make sense out of all of them. You really should only have about 4 or 5 key performance indicators, but they should be a combination of leading indicators as well as, results-oriented indicators.
It's good to know.
And Matt, if I can comment on top of that. So on top of some of those KPIs, what we've found, we've actually encouraged people to add are interactive measures, that things like how often are you participating? How often are you contributing to the team? And they can be small things, but it is just a matter of, and especially because you're using things like Slack, you can do some metrics there to see who's participating when, and then use that as a tool to say, well, the people who are quieter, how do I get those people to speak up some more? Just adding on to some of those metrics we found to be valuable to help build that team cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So next question, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and maybe this is a little building on in terms of, now we're measuring goals and KPIs and we have a good check-in structure. So I'm going to ask Nadia you this next question. How are companies celebrating their employee success when they're meeting these goals and reaching these KPIs? And follow-up question, how are managers remotivating teams when objectives are not met, when we're not reaching our goals?
Well, that's a very good question. And I would say that maybe let's start with the wrong side of doing things. Sometimes there's a lot of bias behind it, because I want to refer back to what all of you said a moment ago. Basically, bottom line, we need to have everything documented properly. Our entire project management, literally, all the processes, everything that's going on. And only then we can make sure that everything that we do is bias free. Okay. So it's not like, oh, great job, just because I think so, because then other people who are not around, they may feel left out. And that is really crucial to take that into account. So how they celebrate it? Well, from a practical aspect, also I was talking about it recently in Berlin 2 days ago, actually. Well, there's a great option, and I will repeat myself 2,000 times about it, to, for goodness sake, keep using emojis in real life, because they've been designed to express emotions, right? So if we are not together all the time and we can't see our body language, right, and feel and have this amazing vibe together, then that's why they were designed in the first place. So obviously, when we want to celebrate, we get really happy, we get really enthusiastic. So now when we look at all the pictures, when we look at GIFs, we also have GIFs, right? We can have them on our Slack channels. We can have them in Microsoft Teams, no problem with that. Same with emojis. Then, when we look at our brains from a scientific perspective, then we tend to process pictures with the same part of our brain as we process emotions, okay? And that's great. So if we want to celebrate success and we are sending a message to our team member and we're saying, good job, well, it may be like, good job, or good job, or good job, If there is no emotion attached, it can be a real celebration, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I've seen different Slack channels that are obviously called celebrations, literally shout outs, well done, all of these kind of things, tagging each other, obviously organizing happy hours or meeting even together when the team meets all the goals, for example, obviously. And now when it comes to giving feedback, and also when something goes wrong, something that I recommend to everyone, literally, when it comes to giving feedback in a distributed team, is a facts-based approach. And I love to use the desk feedback approach. Why? Because it always focuses on facts. So we have to remember that if we are in an environment that we literally close our laptop and we are alone with everything that's just been said, there is tons of opportunities for misinterpretation depending on how we feel in the very certain moment. So now if you're a manager, if you're a leader and you're having a conversation with your team members and you're saying, well, great job, but kind of not really. So they leave and it's a sandwich feedback, right? And the sandwich feedback model, right? So they leave and in the end, they're like, I'm mixed up. So did I do a good job? Did I do a bad job? Or, or they're just doing this on purpose because I'm remote, they can't see me, So let's just forget all this and let's use the desk feedback framework in a nutshell. What does it look like? Obviously, I strongly recommend to Google it. So DESC. So it always focuses on the context, like what's really what's happened, like what's the background, what's the situation, how do I feel about it, okay? What did they do to me? Like, how do I feel about it? What was the consequence of it, right? It can be like, oh, you just kind of screwed this up, right? Oh, come on, I didn't want to. If I don't understand, I don't even understand my mistake, right? For example. But if I say, all right, this is the context, that's what happened to me and to the team, it triggered another situation that negatively impacted the whole company, for example, because of the thing that you did. Let's show this analytical approach and let's have a conversation with that person to say, what would you change? What's your idea to make things better, rather than having this top-down approach that it's my obligation as a manager, as a leader, to tell you what you did wrong and try to fix this for you. No, let's give people the opportunity to fix things themselves, because that's why they've joined this company. And remember that when we have distributed teams, remote teams, what we always want to achieve is have people as team members where they join us based on intrinsic motivation. So if they will feel and connect emotionally that, oh, what I've done made people feel that way, I have to understand their perspective, and it triggered those consequences, I want to do better because I want to be part of this. So those are my recommendations. I hope that helps.
No, emojis are such a game changer, really. I even from like an advertising perspective, an email with emojis in it, I'm going to actually probably read and pay attention to way more than just plain text.
And also because when we have plain text and we have a picture, also our brain is designed this way that it always favors the picture. In the very first second, instead of reading, we will look at the picture like instantly, right? And that what gives us this emotional connection. And there is scientific research that proves this, right? So just don't think that I'm too serious to use emojis. No, because every business is about emotions, right? If we are building a culture, we want to connect emotionally with the people. If you're willing to provide an amazing customer experience, the experience is about emotions. So let's use emojis. Very simple.
I do want to bring up something I saw you posted on LinkedIn not too long ago, was all about RSVPing to meetings. Like when somebody invites you somewhere, you don't give them a maybe, or you don't ignore them. You say yes or no. Yeah, it's an easy talk, but as soon as I read that, I was like, yeah, I would love for people all to either just say yes or no, and not kind of like leave me unread.
Yeah, and that's like a no-brainer, literally, because I always ask this question each and every single time. I ask people when I have different like webinars, workshops, do you accept or decline meetings? Sometimes, and I'm like, okay. So if someone says, oh, let's have coffee or lunch, you're like, okay, wait for me. Maybe I come, maybe I won't come. Surprise, surprise. We don't do this to each other. So why do we do this online? Come on, let's just stop that.
Absolutely. So I do want to kind of keep going on this topic. And Vivek, I'm curious if you have thoughts on how do you overcome team members that simply just do not engage? We all know these introverts. We all know I'm introverted. I'm guilty of this as too. What solutions have you found that kind of work with that?
Yeah, and it's so it's not a solution, it's a process, right? So and I think it's a very important one because there's so much talent that we find a lot of companies leave kind of untapped, just people who haven't engaged for whatever reason, and sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's just comfort. Your hope is not just they're disengaged and unhappy, but if they are, address that. But there's a lot of talent that we're not seeing, a lot of ideas and a lot of ideation we're not getting. So I like to say it's a little bit of an art and a science, but it definitely takes time, and it's a practice. First thing you need to do is build psychological safety, right? So, and you think about that term, it sounds very, very great term, and actually, I really like that term. The idea is to make the team a safe environment. What does that mean? That means that if I say something, hey, I have an idea, I have a thought, it's not ridiculed. It's received well, and it's even if you don't adopt it, we're not saying you have to adopt every idea. We're saying you need to receive the idea and ensure that the person's idea is valued and the team receives it. That takes time. That's a cultural issue. And that takes time, that takes practice, and that takes leadership. And I go back to what Dean said about setting that mission from top down. That's how it comes. You need to be open to those ideas so that when people speak, they feel valued. And if they feel valued, they will speak again, right? And those type of things. Now, those are things that take some time, but you need to build that environment. People need to feel safe to speak up. On top of that, then start having some small activities and make them small things that they can do quickly. They and don't have to stop their work to do. We like to do things like slideshows. So contribute an image of something, like something, it has a dual purpose, helps get to know each other, but also helps improve participation. Do a couple of activities like, everyone give me a picture, just find a Google picture of your favorite food. Right? And I love that one. Just me personally, I have a team that's overseas in Pakistan, and who actually, honestly, I've never met in person, but I've been working with them for years, and we have a very close relationship. But several years ago, we did this exact thing. I said, show me your favorite food, and I waited for everybody to participate and said, hey, we're not completing this task till everyone contributes. Doesn't require you to be on camera, doesn't require you to speak. Just send me an image and we'll put them together into a slideshow. But what I found great about that, it built participation, but also from getting to know each other, I expected to get pictures of vegetarian dishes, by thinking about Pakistan and how they, their cuisine. The very first picture I got back was a picture of a steak on a grill. And he said, I like my steak medium rare. I really was like, Vivek, you're not as smart as you think you are. You probably need to know these people a little bit better. But it started the process of building greater participation. So do activities like this, where it doesn't take much to do. On occasion, say, hey, I was, the weather's changing here, and we're in all these different time zones. Everyone just send me a quick picture of what it looks like outside. Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is it, is our leaves changing, or things like that? And really an opportunity to get to understand how people are feeling, but also builds that psychology of saying, I need to contribute in order for the team to finish this task. And do them in small pieces, and you'll find that gets contagious. And as you build that type of contribution from each person, that translates into larger and larger tasks, where now you're going to see the team more willing to participate, more willing to engage. And that's on the task level. On the social level, they just need to continue to see how to contribute. Once you build that psychological safety, you'll start to see them start to build up and start to speak up more.
So I do want to follow up with some of these ideations, and Nadia, Dean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So virtual events generally are not as engaging as they were during the pandemic, since the bars and restaurants are open again. People don't want to spend their Friday nights in front of the computer. They want to go out. So beyond what Vivek just was describing, what are some other unique ways that you've seen companies connect their employees socially and engage them, when things get a little mundane?
I think that one of the biggest biases that many people think is that remote companies never have real life interactions. That's completely not true, because literally every remote company that I know, once in a while, they gather people, everyone connects, they meet together, and then it's either for, brainstorming, or it's just for social interactions, or it's just to do things together for team building activities. So I would say that it also depends. So when it comes to online events, obviously, I've seen ridiculous ideas, like you're saying, how can we do a social on Friday night, which requires everyone to switch on Netflix at the same time and watch the same series? It's ridiculous, that's the online event that some teams were doing, right? We really want to reduce screen time. So I would say that if we are doing something online, that it also has to teach us new things, and it really has to be engaging. So I would say a concept that has always worked very well within the teams that I've worked with is lunch and learn. It's not just about a chit chat, but it's about, okay, I'm joining, we're having this interaction, but we're learning something about each other. So now we talked about different cultures here. So let's say our team is from all around the world. Let's do this lunch and learn, and let's have something that is going to be like, oh, today you are going to talk about where you come from, your culture, what's special there. We will learn something about it as well. And it's fun. We get to know each other, not just to say like, oh, we're just going to play bingo or whatever, because it's just nonsense in the end. So I would say if we learn and if it adds value, then those things we can keep online. But since there hopefully will be no lockdowns, it's an amazing opportunity for us to meet in real life. And what's interesting, there are different apps, for example, now on the market, that if you have a bigger team and people are all around the world, then you can install this app and you can see who's close to you. And then you can meet up with that person, which is actually really cool. The same thing comes to traveling, and also companies that have introduced workations, where you can share, for example, where you've been, rate the place and say, oh, I'm going to actually be there at the same time. What do you recommend? Where can we get together? Things like that. Obviously, another story is all the co-working spaces, right? Where people can actually meet if they live close to one another in one city. And obviously those big socials, those big events such as conferences, get-togethers, because those are not only memories that last forever, but from my perspective, I can say when I've worked with teams that I haven't met in real life for 2-3 years, and suddenly we met in real life, it was just unbelievable how real it felt, that although we have never met, we felt like we've known each other for years. And it was amazing to kind of all the energy to connect together, to have this fun, and to really validate that I'm here for a reason. So don't just, keep repeating the things that you've done for the past 2-3 years because it was an easy way out when someone was locked up at home. But think of innovation, like what can we do better? And ask the people. Like, don't push everyone into, oh, let's have this happy hour today, and no one's joining, and you're pinging people. Why isn't anyone joining? Right? No, it doesn't work that way. That's supposed to be for the people, not the other way around. Thank you.
Well, kind of to follow up on what Vivek said, it really helps if those people that won't really collaborate or engage much, to have something that's going to allow them to contribute. And once they build that feeling of contribution, they'll still tend to do it. We have numerous Slack channels to encourage engagement. Things like we call one Pets of Affagility. So all the people will post pictures of their dogs and cats and other types of pets. And then we have a movies to watch channel where people say, oh, I just saw this interesting movie on Netflix or whatever. Wishing people birthdays is key. And then probably one of our more popular channels is Current Office View. So we kind of have a practice that if you're in someplace really cool, you got to pop open your laptop and then take a picture with the cool stuff in the background. So my favorite one was I went to Jordan, and I had an extra day, so I went down to Petra. So I was down in Jordan. I'm up on the hill there with the Treasury building, like you see from Indiana Jones, in the background with my laptop popped open. So, doing that kind of makes it fun. And everybody's kind of gotten in the practice of having Current Office View. And kind of to follow up with what Nadia said, having offsites, just because you're 100% remote doesn't mean you don't ever see anybody face to face. So, we last year, after everybody felt comfortable traveling, we had all the people from North America travel to Philadelphia, and we rented 2 big Airbnbs for everyone. We cooked dinner together, sat around the living room and had some wine and beers, and it was a great time, and people loved it. People loved it because they got to know each other as a human being. And so we want to try to do more of those things. It's a little difficult for the international employees, but if you're having a conference in the US, that's important from a technical standpoint. Invite somebody from the international location to attend that conference, because not only are they getting valuable learning out of it, they're getting to meet some of the other team members. I personally try to make it a goal of mine to see every employee in real life once a year. It's a little hard sometimes, but that's my goal. So it does require a lot of miles, that's for sure. So that's kind of my recommendations on encouraging collaboration, and communication collaboration, like everything, it starts from the top. I have to let everybody know that it is okay to do that, right? To jump on a call, to engage and be collaborative. It always starts from the top.
I just want to say that I'm going to steal this Jordan idea because I'm going to Petra in December. So sorry.
Lug your laptop up to Petra.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
There is a key insight there too that we usually pitch is remote works best when you have intentional gathering, in-person gathering. I would say the study that was talking about managers wanting their staff to come back just so that they can keep an eye on people shows the intention is like mistrust. The intention is to watch.
Mhm.
It's the wrong intention, as opposed to having the intention of we're gathering to connect and get to know each other and spend some time together. It's way more wholesome. And like Dean was saying, it's really what people want to do. And that's why we do the work we do. So we're at the top of the hour. I know we're going to lose some people here that might have to jump off. If you do stick around, we're going to enter our live Q&A section. So we gathered a bunch of questions from you guys before you joined. If you have any questions that come to mind, feel free to drop them in the Q&A section. I do also want to introduce a new concept we're working on. Is a meet and greet mastermind. So what we want to do is give you guys, our guests, an opportunity to meet and greet each other. So I'm going to drop a link here in the chat. We only have room for about 30 people to join next Tuesday. It's totally free. There's no charge, nothing like that. And we really want to kind of build a space where other remote leaders can connect with each other, share ideas, have similar conversations, and see how things go from there. So here comes the link. Feel free to fill out this form. There's like 10 to 12 questions that are going to give us a better opportunity to learn about you, see what you're looking for in a group like this, and better facilitate how a mastermind might go. So are you guys ready for some Q&A?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All righty. So we'll just kind of go down the list here. We probably won't get to all these, but we'll try our best here. So low performers. How do you engage someone who is low performing and not willing to engage? So we kind of talked on that a little bit. So I'm curious, at what point do you say that it's time to terminate, or how much are you willing to invest? If I'm rewording this question, how much are you willing to invest in a low performer before you just say this isn't working? And this is open, so whoever wants to answer this, feel free to jump in.
Well, this is a very tricky question, because how depends on the area of the world, because HR laws, vary so drastically from country to country. I mean, how much notice you have to give people, what's the termination process, et cetera. We use an employer of record for hiring our employees. And what I've heard from some people, that in Japan, it is extremely difficult to terminate an employee. So, the level of documentation, I mean, it always starts off with would always start off with a verbal conversation with their direct manager, and they would insist that they be on an online video call. And so that starts off that way, and see where it goes from there. They would give them a verbal warning, typical, then it might have to be documented, but it really varies depending on the country.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100%. That is the number one that I think many companies are doing mistakenly. Like, yeah, okay, I'm going to terminate you, and then there's tons of trouble because, as you said, there are different employment laws. But then also, I think sometimes it's also very important to try to find out what's happening in the background, because it may be that the context has to be very clear, because it may be that in an ideal world, we have everything documented properly, but there are some companies that have absolutely nothing documented because they haven't done their homework, and they said, oh, you can work remotely. So then these people, they work from home, they're trying to do their job, they don't know how, they don't get feedback, they get discouraged, for example. Maybe they have some problems, some other problems, and us as leaders with, I hope, a proper level of knowledge when it comes to emotional intelligence, we should also be able to dig into this a bit deeper and find out what the problem is, help these people find out how to reach their goals again. And if this isn't doable, and then start documenting and be very transparent to see what the consequences are then going to be, rather than just being biased and observing, oh, you're not working, because we also have to determine what a low performer is. Again, in some mindsets, it may be, oh, this person isn't attending all meetings, which is a paradox, but that could be true. Or this person isn't, I don't know, responding quickly, so they're probably not working. Of course, those are situations that should never happen, but then we really have to define the expectations very properly. And that's the key word, probably, expectations, not biases. And then obviously follow the processes. You've just explained that, Dean.
Yeah, and the expectation should be given as clearly as possible, at least in the orientation training. And I think this is where a lot of companies struggle is, in an in-person environment, they did very well with orientation training. But now that people are got remote, that kind of has had to be re-engineered, I guess is the way to put it. And some companies aren't very good at re-engineering their orientation programs for a remote environment. So that's extremely important. So you not only that you discuss the main requirements of the job, the technical requirements of the job, but I typically give a culture presentation for every employee orientation. This is what the culture of the company is like. And then the manager should say what their basic expectations are. And then, of course, then when you do your annual reviews and things like that and setting OKRs for the following year, expectations should be reiterated, especially if somebody's a low performer. But I agree with you, Nadia. You got to be very clear. Do they have all the tools? Ask them, what that manager can do for them to help them improve. But if you've ever read the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott, I mean, that's an excellent book. You gotta be brutally honest with people sometimes, particularly in a remote environment. But do it in a way that you're not trying to be hurtful or mean, that you're doing it to help them. So I would recommend that reading for anybody that's a manager.
One piece I just want to add on to this, and not as much on the termination side, but just on the figuring out, is this person, why are they a low performer? Is it skills? Is it interest? Is it engagement? Do they not want to be part of this team? So just a couple of tools there. I mean, and that's where really the manager's coaching and mentoring really is going to come and play very heavily. But as much as you can, have the conversations not in email, not in text, but in video as much as you can. And the reason you say that it can be asynchronous video, it could be recorded video, do video messaging back and forth to have some of these conversations. You will see things when you're talking to somebody live that you can't interpret through an email, through their words. So as you're doing those things, that increased engagement, that increased eye-to-eye contact, even if it's not live eye-to-eye contact, even if it's through video messaging, I think would give a great benefit into getting to the source of that disengagement.
I do want to bring up this question from Michael here in the Q&A. We're going to answer it live here. So how do you balance employees who are introverts and are loving the more detached work environment? In-person office and work culture traditionally benefited extroverts. So somewhat to what Vivek spoke about. Now that introverts have found their groove, it seems like the focus is on how to make extroverts happier again, to the detriment of introverts. Here we are in the balance again.
So if you guys, let me start with this one. We have a term at Be Remote called level the social playing field. And really, it's not about trying to keep people quiet, but it's trying to give people an equal opportunity to speak. So, and what that's about is that there's always going to be people who are extroverted, who are comfortable in social environments are always going to be better. It's always going to be, they're going to be more vocal. They're going to say more words. They're going to say it better. They're going to say it more eloquently. I think about giving people the opportunity to say the things that need to be said. So we believe in leveling the social playing field. It's never going to be 50 all the way across. It's going to be 60-40. It's going to be things like this, but get it as close as you can so that people have an opportunity to speak. So
I also think that misconception that we have here is that we keep thinking that remote and distributed means being locked up at home, which is very hard for extroverts. The point is that if we are very flexible, and as I've said initially, we have co-working spaces, we are embracing global mobility, being able to go here, there, travel, have all these extra activities, also encourage people by giving people benefits, right? Giving benefits to choose from. So if I have my job to do, okay, then after work, I can go here. I can actually, have dancing classes, yoga, meet people, socials, learn a language, or actually go to a co-working space where I have my membership and meet people and be around them all the time. And if I'm an introvert, I can work from home. I can even, if you are hybrid, if this company is hybrid, they can go to the office and just stay there, I don't know, in a small space, and just keep working there. And I think that it's all about awareness, what we need and who we really are, and how we can design for ourselves as employees the optimal working experience. And I think that many people also say, and there are many statistics that say that work from home means loneliness and isolation. I think this is not true in a normal setup, in normal circumstances. We were forced, and again, I hate to talk about the pandemic because we really want to forget about it, but we keep associating remote and work from home with this emergency situation. Whereas the truth is that today, the key word of everything that we're talking about today is flexibility. So the question is, how flexible can I be? Should I be? Do I want to be? And also another paradox is that many people say, oh, I feel isolated, I feel lonely. If you as a human being only get social interactions at work, then you have a problem, I would say. So what happens after work? How do you balance that out, right? So I think there is a lot of work from a company perspective to understand that people are different, from a leadership perspective, but also individually to understand, if I don't like staying home, then let's just go somewhere else. I tend to obviously travel. Many people know that, but if I feel that my energy is down, I just go to a beautiful French cafe with French music and have a croissant and delicious coffee. And I'm like, it's just been such an amazing day because I wanted to be around people, So design whatever works best for you instead of saying, we're just going to do it this way,
Nadia, if I can comment on what you just said about isolation. I mean, we did have one employee about a year or so ago leave the company because she felt isolated. She said she felt like an old lady because she she never left the house, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to interviewing in the first place. If you interview, you can ask, well, what kind of hobbies do you have? What do you do outside of work? And to your point, that if the only social interaction that they're getting is at work, then they're probably not the best for a 100% remote work environment. So I think that's an excellent point. And we do encourage employees that, if they're feeling isolated, that, you can go to the library, go to a coffee shop, go somewhere else where you can be around people. Personally, myself, in the afternoons, I have an office in the basement. It's a nice office, but I want to be around people. So I go somewhere else in the afternoon where, a cafe or something where I can work rather and be around other human beings. We also contract with a co-working space so that we can actually, people have that option. If they need a day or two in an office environment, we can make that happen.
Next question here looks like came in from Rachel. Do you have key questions that you ask during employee one-on-one to encourage people to talk about how they're doing? I would assume this means in terms of mental health, burnout, wellness generally. Vivek, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I was trying to go through them. I mean, there's a long list of ways to address this. I don't know if it's a specific list, but I mean, starting off with just so again, unfortunately, I'm going to go back to saying it's a little bit of a process where if you can start getting to know your people, right, and getting to know things that are happening in their lives, right. I had a conversation with someone said, hey, did you know that Jane's son just graduated from high school, or Jim's just got a new dog and things like this? And you spend 12 hours a day with these people, maybe you should know, right? So if you can start knowing those things, starting off with being able to talk to somebody about something personal and say, hey, how did that thing go? Hey, you're building this new thing on your house. How's that going? You'll start to infer things that they'll say that'll give you a sense of how this person is doing, and we'll start to open up the conversation about, well, tell me about how your day is going, and how do you map out your day, and when do you take your breaks? Do you find your you're working far into the night, or hey, I saw you responded at 2 a.m, and then but we're on at this time to to this type of this conversation that was happening. So those type of things I think you need to pay attention to. Yeah, I was starting to think it's a great question. I was thinking about a list. I don't think it's a specific list, but if Nadia and Dean have some thoughts, I'd love to go through those. But I think it's an environment that you have to set, and it's a conversation that you have to start. But it starts with knowing a little bit more about people on a personal level, so that they're willing to open up and talk to you.
I'd love to plug in this great resource. It's called We're Not Really Strangers, and it's a card game, but it comes with all these really great questions that are a little bit that you wouldn't really think of. And there's levels based on how far deep you want to connect with somebody. But questions could something like, do I look like somebody who's punctual or somebody who's late all the time? Do I look like somebody who's clean or organized? And these are nice ways to kind of break the ice. And then it goes deeper to questions that could revolve around, what's something you wish people asked you more? Or what's something you wish people asked you more about? And that way you kind of have really, you could do these as events. I would definitely recommend that little card deck. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's try to.
Wait,
sorry.
I love it. I think it's great, actually, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, we do it for fun just sometimes. But yeah, they're really, because you can't always think about like the right questions to ask to connect with somebody. And this, We're Not Really Strangers does a really great job just putting it on a little flashcard.
Awesome.
So we do get a lot of questions about hybrid teams, so remote and on-site, half and half, 3/4, 1/4. So out of curiosity, how would you engage a hybrid team? And do you treat all as a remote team, or so as not to have their own, not to have a two-tier? You want to be inclusive, but obviously if you're having a fun event for the in-person team, you kind of exclude the remote team. So what's some ideas about hybrid functionality?
I love that one. So first of all, I think that when it comes to hybrids, the problem is that many companies are trying to connect the old normal with the new normal. So the new normal is you work remotely, the old normal, you stay in the office. So how do we do that? My approach is that if at least one person in your team doesn't work from the office, you already have a distributed team to start with. So the thing is that when it comes to real life meetings, when it comes to offsites, I've seen different conferences, for example, also within companies that were trying to gather people like on site, but then whoever is remote, you can join remotely. You will never be able to ensure the same experience. It's just not possible. It's not possible that, people are joining online. If there's a party and people are having beer, but you're just, on a screen and doing this from home, it's just a no. It's never going to be the same experience. So I would say, try to include all the people that are remote in all offsites, if only that is possible. But then on the other hand, when it comes to other operational aspects other than offsites, then every hybrid company should act with a remote first mindset. Absolutely, because then we are not going to deal with issues like proximity bias. People won't feel left out. So it has to be scalable, everything that we do. So we have to be very intentional once again. So let's think about it. What are we completely going to delegate to do online so that everyone's on the same page, and all the things that are meaningful from a connection perspective, then let's just get together if that's possible. That would be my recommendation.
Thing about hybrid's the worst. I mean, it's very difficult to pull off well, to Nadia's point, that you're kind of competing against the old way and the new way. So even our leadership team meeting, which we used to do hybrid this time around, because 3 of our team members are within close proximity to where I live. We used to do it hybrid, and we were like, well, what's the point? It's too difficult. Now everybody does it remote, so, and then the all hands, we do it 100% remote. We've done it a few times hybrid. And again, we've tried all sorts of technology like the owl cameras, and things like that. But you find yourself in those meetings, you're trying to maintain face-to-face communication without looking at the people that are on the camera remotely. So, it's very difficult to do correctly.
I agree with that, and it also goes along the level of playing field, right? So try to keep that even. I heard somebody say during the pandemic, it was kind of the great equalizer, and one of the biggest problems that we see with hybrid is what we call the meeting after the meeting, right? So everyone's in a meeting. Some people are physically in the meeting room. Some people are in someplace else, and everyone says, "Okay, we have a game plan," and you came out of the meeting. And then two people walk out of the meeting together. Everyone's off the camera, nobody else in the meeting, and they make a different decision. Meeting after the meeting, highly destructive activity. So if you can take things like that and figure out what those activities are that need to be remote first, and I love that terminology about figuring out what those activities are. I would say meeting after the meeting is one of those that if you do walk out of the meeting and you have this quick conversation, just two people, and this is a lifelong thing. This is not new, but hybrid really accentuates it. Find a way to post that to the whole team. Use the asynchronous tools and get that conversation and get everybody on the same page. Say, sorry, me and Nadia just walked out of this room. We had a different conversation. There was some information we didn't get a chance to share. Here's what it is. I want everybody to chew on this. This is what we're thinking. Get that conversation going. So those are some of the things very functionally that I think if you can get remote first in that hybrid model that you need to focus on.
That's a great point, Vivek. I always say that we go to a lot of conferences, attend a lot of conferences, give presentations, etc. And I always say that the most value of a conference is not the presentation, it's the conversations that occur out in the hallway. That's very, very difficult to replicate in a hybrid situation. So, but I do like your meeting after the meeting comment there.
So let's hit our last question here. We've got about 5 minutes left. Another one that is kind of on top of people's minds. So how do you ensure that your team is delivering without coming across as too controlling? And how do you ensure that the team is getting along when they're working remotely most of the week? I guess in this sense, it's a hybrid situation. But I think that the concern here is, I don't want to track my team's screens or their keyboard engagements, but how do you also make sure that they're doing the job other than, is the paper being written?
Proper project management tools and automation. Okay. Asynchronous processes. Let me give you a great example. So even if a team is hybrid, so on Mondays, if you have this 3-2 or 2-3 approach, you want to meet in the office, everyone, that's fine. On Tuesday, when people work elsewhere, you don't have to do a check-in or a stand-up for 30 minutes, but use a plugin where people will just quickly write down, okay, what's the plan for today? What are you planning to do? Or you have different project management tools. I'm not going to give the names now because I'm not going to advertise any of them. But then when you have deadlines set up, when you have time frames, everything, you just click on it and you immediately see everything. You have Gantt charts, you have Kanban boards, literally everything. And if the people just know how to navigate all this, you don't have to micromanage and track mouse moves, because then what's going to happen, and I saw tons of memes about it. So people buy this with a cable and they attach it to a fan. The mouse is moving. My manager thinks I'm working. This is ridiculous. Yeah, see that, And I'm watching Netflix. Come on, let's track the output and goals and all the expectations, as we've all mentioned here, right? Am I delivering on time, a great quality, and what have we agreed? When are the check-ins? They can be async. And the tools. If it's not there, if it's not documented, it doesn't exist, period.
Great answer.
Absolutely.
I love the mouse video. That was great. I love the creativity I do, but it's just, is that really how you want to track your people, is mouse movement? I don't agree with that. But
well, kind of along that same question. I mean, as a leader, you have to have a certain amount of emotional intelligence, and if you got to be able to apply that emotional intelligence in a remote work environment as well, and try to figure out what's going on in people's heads. And if you get a bad feeling, then you have to engage. you might have to start the engagement, right? So yeah, that's important. And as I've always said, if you were a poor manager to begin with, being remote just amplifies it, right? So you got to have a good base of good managers.
Absolutely. So we're just about. Oh, go ahead, Nadia. Get
just one comment. Thank you, Dean. What you mentioned, that if someone was a bad manager before remote, this just amplified it. The same thing is about meetings. Meetings that we held in offices also were kind of nonsense. In most cases, if not all of them, absolutely. But then there was the social interaction, so we wouldn't feel it that much. But if everything started being online, where the meaning and the intention started being crucial, not the social interaction, because of Zoom fatigue that we've spoken about, this has also amplified how unproductive we've been before. So that's the same kind of situation. That's just one thing I wanted to add.
Totally agree.
Totally agree.
Fantastic. Everyone, we're at that time. For those of you still with us, we are hosting a 14-day remote leaders intensive in Spain this February. We're going to have some of our past speakers, present speakers, future speakers, all these wonderful people are going to come join us. So if you want to learn more, head over to the site and get those applications in. We only have room for about 30 people, so be sure to do that relatively soon. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. Dean, Vivek, Nadia, fantastic. I hope everyone thought you were as valuable as I did. That was a huge value. So much joy come from bringing you guys together. And I think you guys really know what you're talking about. So I hope everyone really took what you said to heart and hopefully build this into their teams and build this into their work. For those asking, yes, the video is on YouTube. It'll be posted later today for any recorded or people looking for recordings. Round of applause. I don't know.
Thank you.
All of us. And attendees.
Attendees, thank you all for taking the time to join us. Of course, we'll have more information on our next webinar coming up soon. In terms of topics, we're going to be talking about diversity, inclusion, and hiring remote teams. And our final webinar will be all about virtual and in-person events for your teams. So thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.